a Zoom call when I was in Scottsdale.
All right.
And I couldn't make everything work than I said. It was a bunch of vendors. They roared. I go, well, it's working.
Thank you for the heads up to wear a sweater.
Yes. I did ask him to change the temperature, so it's gotten better.
Okay.
All right, it's fine. I call the meeting to order. Let the roll call show that all members of the board are present. Our first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We next have the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Madison, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll move on to informational reports, starting with a summary of current events from Dr. Sweeney.
Madam President, members of the governing board, and guests, the U.S. News and World Report recently released its best high school rankings, and Fountain Hills High School is ranked number 52 out of 550 high schools in the state of Arizona.
Nice.
That puts it in the top 10% of public high schools in the state, and that ranking is based on a combination of factors that include the graduation rate, state assessment proficiency, college curriculum breadth, and college curriculum readiness. And the breadth and readiness components are both related directly to AP participation and AP testing. And while it's important that we always look for ways to improve, it's also important to celebrate the accomplishments along the way, and I congratulate the high school students and the staff on earning this ranking. Congratulations are also in order for high school English teacher Jamie Sunshine, who was named the Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce Teacher of the Year last week. Also nominated for the award were McDowell Mountain teachers Nicole Valentino and Nicole Latona, and middle school teacher Val Reichler. And I'd like to congratulate all of them and Mr. Sunshine because they do represent the district well. Also, I want to update the board on the ongoing work of the Facilities Use Advisory Committee, whose task is ultimately to provide input and recommendations to the board regarding existing and future facilities use as it relates to the potential consolidation of school sites within the district. Long list of people who make up this committee, but I think it's important to recognize them all. We've got Peter Conti as a community member, Sam Elder, who is a teacher at McDowell Mountain, Kim Flowers, who is both a high school staff member and a parent, John Flynn, Facilities and Transportation, Jolene Goldapper, who is a parent and PTO president, Jane Irwin, who is a McDowell Mountain teacher and also a middle school parent, Terry McGinnis, who is a neighbor in the McDowell Mountain neighborhood, Allison Meekum, who is a high school parent, Kimberly Paulson, McDowell Mountain parent, Cassie Quintana, who is interim director at the Fort McDowell Education Division, our own Mrs. Reed, FHUSD board member, Tony Rybale, McDowell Mountain neighbor, Val Reichler, middle school teacher and high school parent, and Rachel Walters, McDowell Mountain parent. To date, the committee has met 5 times, most recently yesterday, and our meetings have rotated between the sites, and that has afforded us the opportunity to do site tours. And John Flynn has provided us summaries on those sites of the known capital needs, both short-term and long-term. At yesterday's meeting, we focused on the known capital needs and the capital funding available to meet those needs, and had the opportunity to discuss the gap between those two things. And as you are well aware, the capital needs that we have far exceed the capital funding that we have available to meet them. We had some discussions around the topics of the district additional assistance override, a capital bond, and a potential sale of the undeveloped land, which we'll be discussing tonight, and how the proceeds of each of these could be used. Our next meeting is scheduled for May 10th at the middle school, and at that meeting we're going to start looking at specific options about how the spaces might be used to accommodate students at the middle school between grades pre-K through grade 5 or grade 6, depending on what that looks like, And we'll begin taking a look at how the high school might be more efficiently utilized to accommodate grades either 6 through 12 or 7 through 12, depending how those numbers fall. Future meetings will focus on a deeper look at the high school space, the known costs of any reconfiguration of those buildings to accommodate the changes, and also known operational costs for each site, including utilities, water, internet, et cetera. Based on the committee's work so far, I do believe we are on track to provide a written report and the committee's recommendations to the board no later than June 29th as originally intended. Finally, related to the issue of capital needs and capital funding, I want to thank Catherine King, our finance director, for her vigilance and tenacity, I will say perhaps like a dog on a bone, that resulted in our receiving approximately $700,000 in district additional assistance override funds that we thought we should be receiving for this school year, but which were being withheld by ADE. And this issue came about as a misunderstanding due to a clerical error dating back to December of 2014, right after the election of November 2014, when the DAA override was passed during that election. There was a piece of paper submitted to the state that said the new funding would begin in fiscal year 15, which is the 14-15 school year. In fact, there was already a capital override in place at that time, and all of the election materials and supporting documents and the ballot itself were exceedingly clear that it would start during fiscal year 16, the 15-16 school year, and run for 7 years, which would put us into this school year. In the original budget that Catherine prepared, that money was in that budget. That money had to be removed when ADE withheld it and said, the override's over, you're not getting that. So she stuck with it and stuck with it and stuck with it and did not take no for an answer. And yesterday, the mistake was corrected and we were awarded the funds for this school year that we believe we were due all along. I want to be clear, this is not a windfall in that our capital needs are significant. And again, that money was in the budget originally for this year. But it does give us a little bit of breathing room and puts us in a better position today than we were in yesterday when we all woke up. And with that happy note, I will conclude my comments for the evening.
Thank you. Thank you to the members of the Facilities Use Committee. The work that they're doing is very important to help the board be informed and make plans in partnership with district administration for what we're doing with our finances and how we can be fiscally responsible stewards of the money that we have to use for the school district. And many, many thank yous to Catherine. That's why we all were like, what do you mean there's no money?
Right.
No, there's supposed to be money.
Sure. Are you sure it came out of my mouth? Yeah. I don't think it expired.
Yes. Excellent. Any other comments about, okay, we will move on to governing board reports. So we'll start with you, Mrs. Reed.
I attended the Facilities Use Committee meeting yesterday, and I just echo your sentiments that this is really important that we hear from all stakeholders. You know, we have parents, teachers, local community members who, you know, reorganizing McDowell Mountain, because that's an issue that did come up yesterday, is that we want to make it clear we're not actually closing, we're not losing K through 3, we're just moving. So so it is good that we're hearing from everybody. So I attended that, and I thank all those committee members that come and attend and use their voices to let us know, you know, what's being said, what we need to hear. So thank you.
Mr. Sarr?
Just that my school year ends 3 weeks from today. And then summer school starts the following week.
Dr. Bernard.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Reed, for being our voice on the Facilities Committee, and to all the members that are part of that. I think it's so important to have key stakeholders part of those discussions, and they are appreciated. I attended the Coalition Drunk and Drugged Driving Seminar. It was, yeah, oh, that's right. I actually did see you. You sat in front of me.
Okay.
And it was very well done, very informative. And someone won a scholarship, wasn't my kid, but very nice family. I'm glad that they won. And looking forward to all of the events coming up, and thank all the teachers and Stugo and everyone else who is working their tails off this week to get ready for prom on Saturday.
All right, Mrs. Rakowski?
I can say too, I attended that symposium, the one that you were at. And from what I was hearing about it was the people that were up there were saying that these students have to make right choices. That was a big thing. And then they were also talking about DUIs and stuff like that, that the students are probably not making really good choices on some stuff. Towards the end, though, of it, I actually got up and talked to some of them because Dr. Sweeney, the one guy that was like sitting over there and he was talking about the eye exams and stuff, the nystagmus and stuff like that, that's what made me want to go up and talk because I am a registered nurse. I do work for Scottsdale Unified, and when they need a nurse, and if you are in their health office, sometimes these kids make bad decisions in school, which I told them that. And so we have the SRO officers bring them in, or security bringing them in, and then they want the nurse to do a wellness check and everything. And so they want the whole 9 yards to make sure that they're not taking bad drugs and stuff like that. And what bothered me is I said, these kids, right now you're talking about DUIs and that, but you're not talking about what's happening to these kids in school, in the high school, There's a lot of kids like at Saguaro that decide to leave the campus, and then I have to do, on them a substance abuse thing.
Perhaps you can partner with the coalition to do a follow-up presentation.
But I'm just saying that I think that we do a disservice to our students if we don't talk about all our students and what's going on. And in high school, those things are going on. And anybody that, the nurses that work in the health office, they have to take the time to do what's asked of them.
Of course.
So,
Thank you for that additional information.
yeah.
I will say as well that I hope everybody enjoys prom, but has a safe evening. And yes, the board received from Krista today the list of upcoming end of school year events, band concerts and senior recognition night and 8th grade promotion and numerous other things in between. It's always very exciting when we get into the month of May and we can celebrate all of the achievements of the different students across our district. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Okay, we're moving on to public comment.
I know.
Yes. Please read the public comment statement for
I have it
us.
right here. Okay, call to the public. This is the time for the public to comment. Time limits may be allocated on public comment at the discretion of the board president for the board to efficiently complete its business. The board reserves the right to prohibit any comments made in a discourteous or threatening manner. Complaints about specific individuals, students, or personnel are discouraged. Personnel issues should be directed to the appropriate staff member or administrator per district policy. Members of the board, us, may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01, capital H, Action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, we will start with Vincent R. Brennan Jr., please.
From my chair?
You can come up to the podium.
Thank you.
And then you can look at us.
Be careful
and
of my
Yes.
cord.
Well, I'm going to be short anyway.
And again, it's 3 minutes. I'll give you a warning at 30 seconds.
At this time, I would like to defer my time to Ms. Stiles, our spokesperson from 602 Alpha.
Okay, and she is next on the list, so we will give Cheryl Stiles 6 minutes.
Okay, you get 6 minutes. You're on. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you, board members, for letting us speak again tonight. Appreciate the opportunity. I want to thank you again for allowing us to be here to speak about the potential sale of Lot 40 in Plat 602A. We are here tonight again. Guys, raise your hand who's Alago and Cavern. We have a smaller group. Many people had other meetings tonight that they had to do. But we're here to offer our support again tonight to help the school district to get your needed overrides. We do support the school. We want to get them passed now and into the future. This is not just a school board problem, though. We believe this is a community problem which needs to be solved with more permanent solutions. The potential sale of Lot 40 is a Band-Aid approach that will not solve our school district's future financial needs. It's a temporary solution. If the due diligence has been done, then you guys as school board knows, or you should have known, that the development of Lot 40 has not happened in the past due to many different reasons. Those reasons still exist today, which has led past potential developers to dispose of any plans of developing the lot. In addition, Lot 40 in Plat 602A is in the jurisdiction of the Neighborhood Property Owners Association. Their declaration of reservations includes general provisions, improvement standards, and the general land use regulations. Within the declaration of reservations of the NPOA, without variance, the subdivision of lots is not allowed. This fact, in addition to past issues surrounding the property, may once again prove to be a deterrent to development. Therefore, we're requesting you to please consider again to take the Plat 40 off the sale of the lots for November, and let's work together, as many of our homeowners have come up and presented to you, to get the needed overrides, to pass support for our schools now and into our future. Our kids are our future. Thank you.
Since this is on the agenda, I would just like to provide a point of clarification that as of today, the board has not yet voted for this item to go on the ballot. So I feel like there's been a lot of misunderstanding that the land is already up for sale. First of all, the board has to vote to put it on the ballot, and then the community votes for whether or not the district can sell the land. So just wanted to get that clarification out there,
And even if they vote for us to sell it, doesn't necessarily mean
that we will sell it, that there will be a buyer for us to sell it to.
Thank you for all those words that you used.
All right, and then our last public comment is from Ryan Berry. Come on up. Good evening.
Good evening, guys. How's it going? Thank you for letting me speak. I just wanted to resonate with Ms. Stiles. This is something that the community is very concerned about. I thank you for your clarification on that, on where things are and the status that it's in and everything like that. But yeah, that's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank
That's
you.
why I thank you, Nadia, too.
All right, we will head back to our agenda. Moving on to information and discussion items, we have FHEA update from Mr. Buckley. Welcome.
Good evening. Update, just gonna wanted to go through a few things. First, we've seen a 36% increase in membership in FHUSD through our early enrollment, which started April 1st. So our overall membership, we've gone up 36%. I think that's a lot to do with the efforts that we've made this year in conjunction with the district, so appreciate that.
Congratulations.
And then just wanted to throw, we served lunch at all 3 schools this past month, and we talked to teachers in our conversations and surveys. Our 2 biggest issues for teachers at this point are student behavior and professional development. So we are going to be holding meetings with representatives from each school to discuss further action on that. Of course, we have the Professional Development Committee, which I'll also be presenting on here in a little bit. So that, we'll go over that more then. There's some things that I wanted to kind of clarify that I saw out there. There was some misinformation about pay increases. So we actually had a pay increase on average of 7% based on current employees. So I just want to make sure that I heard some people saying that like, oh, we averaged 3%, like, no, we averaged 7%. With every employee getting a 2.5% increase. Also, that on average, the teachers that saw the most increase were actually the veteran teachers who've been in the district for 10 or more years. So there was some thought that we left that group out. We did not leave that group out. Now, the salary scale does end at 10 years at this point. However, we do have future action planned for next year to take place during meet and confer. We'll cover that, of course, next year. But I wanted to clarify that because then some of those people in that same group of teachers saw as much as a 20% increase in their salary, which is great that we were able to have a 7% on average increase because we are one of the less than half of the districts in Arizona actually met the 20 by 20. We met that 20 by 20, then gave a 3% increase, then gave a 7% increase. So that was a 30, the 20 by 20 turned into a 30 by 2022 for Fountain Hills. So I just wanted to clarify that and thank, of course, Interim Superintendent Dr. Sweeney for his help with that. And then on the ballot and stuff in November, we are going to be putting out some surveys for teachers. Of course, off of school platforms, because we can't do that on school platforms, and we're aware of that. But we will be trying to create more of a unified front on that, so that when things get shared throughout the community, and people are talking about teacher voice and what's best for teachers, the teachers in town do have a voice. We are using it, and we can be trusted to deliver our own opinion on things. We don't need other people. As much as we appreciate other people's help, we don't need other people to speak for us. We can and we will be doing that throughout this year and especially in November.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome updates, and thank you. I think every member of this board has said, and at least one board meeting, how important paying our teachers well is, and that is one thing that is a high priority for all of us with retention of our staff. So I think that the 36% uptick in membership is reflective of people who are coming back and seeing that their voice is being heard and want to participate even more. So I think that bodes well for our retention of our staff. And we need a bumper sticker, 30% by 2022.
No, and thank you for coming. I really like that this is part of our work study session because that has always been a communication that the teachers weren't heard. The board wants to hear from you. We want to know what's going on. Our superintendents have primarily been great about sharing things, but we really like to hear from you and our teachers. So I like this part of the work study session. I don't want to see it go away. So thank you for coming and making this productive.
Thank you.
Can I say one more?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Not to you.
You may be seated.
I know, sorry, Mr. Buckley. I love talking to you, but not right now. No, but none of us acknowledge that today is Professional Administrative Assistance Day.
You all did it.
I know, but we need to do it Krista for everything you do. You are amazing. You keep the board on track. You answer 50 million questions that we, send you. And I just want to say thank you for all your hard work and dedication
Yes.
because we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I enjoy working with you, thank you.
Hold that thought.
Okay, our next information discussion item is policy GCQA. It should actually just say GCQA regulation, I think. But anyway, so we had discussed this in the last board meeting and talked about some changes to, or this was the one where we were gonna take the two different ones and kind of smoosh them together. So I did that and sent the draft via Krista to all of you. So are there any comments or suggested changes to the draft that I sent that we would want to put in place before we went ahead and published this regulation?
When did you send the draft?
They went out last week. I'd have to check, let me see,
Yeah.
let me find the email. It was from
Krista
the
sent it.
19th.
I thought it looked good. Thank you
Yeah.
for doing that. Appreciate it. It was
Was it
very
April
succinct.
19th?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can
And was
get a job
it,
with ASBA.
Was it on FUSD, or was it on, or was it?
It would have gone to your email wherever Krista normally sends your stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
If there aren't any comments or further discussion, we can go ahead and have Krista post that to Policy Bridge as a regulation.
Yeah, no, I thought it looked good too.
Then the next item on the agenda is also another policy item associated with the regulation. So we have BEDH, which is our public comment policy. Associated with that as well is a proposed revision to the exhibit that we use for filling out for public comment. Were there any suggested changes to the regulation?
No, I thought you did a good job on this one as well.
Okay, and what about the changes to the exhibit? Any modifications to
Nope,
that?
short and sweet.
Making it easy to fill out is what we're going for.
Yes.
Then we'll go ahead and get those updated and out on Policy Bridge. Next on the agenda, overview of District Professional Development Committee. You have an intro for us? Thank you.
Madam President, members of the government, yes. So TJ, who was here just speaking a moment ago, he and Chris Alexander have been tag teaming on the effort to create a District Professional Development Committee. And as you may recall, that came out of the meet and confer process this year to create that group and to really look wisely at how we use our time before school and ongoing professional development throughout the school year. Chris has a family issue this evening, he wasn't able to attend, so as we discussed this, I said, well, let's have TJ present, because he's the other side of this. So TJ said, sure, he'd do it, and he's just better informed on this than I am. So on short notice, TJ, appreciate you willing to share the progress you and Chris are making on this.
No, thank you. So our committee members, it's myself and of course Chris Alexander, Jessica Kane, the assistant principal at the high school, Christine Barzima at the high school as well, Val Reichler at the middle school, and then Nicole Latona, Caitlin Good, Sam Elder, and Heather DeRosa at the elementary school. Our purpose for the committee is to develop a professional development system for in-service and for the early release Wednesdays. Our vision is a consistent, meaningful, and differentiated professional development for all schools. The committee is working on three main tasks at this time. Number one, the in-service schedule. We're trying to take our 4 days that we've had. I know we've talked about extending that before, but we're trying to work within those 4 days for now to see what we can do to best prepare our teachers. We have 2 mandatory days for all teachers, and then we have 2 optional days for teachers, for returning teachers that are mandatory for new teachers. And so then we're trying to develop a schedule and itinerary for that, as well as for the new teacher orientation. And then developing a spreadsheet with all areas of professional development needs and descriptions for each. identifying current employees that are qualified to teach on that area, and then the frequency of the training.
If you need water, there's actually some water bottles at the dais.
Courtesy of Gotten Health Coalition.
Yes.
And then their main areas are PBIS, beyond textbooks. For the high school, we have AVID, we have student engagement, classroom management, learning management systems, special education, and Fort McDowell engagement. All as areas potentially looking at bringing in community members to help deliver those trainings as well. So for Fort McDowell engagement, potentially bringing in their education division to help with that.
Great.
So that's what we have.
So the LMS, Learning Management System, for a new teacher, even if they're coming from a different district that uses a different LMS, getting that ready to run in the first day of school with an hour or two of training doesn't work. And that can be a problem in that first day of class. Do you have additional time set aside for those teachers who have not used an LMS before or used a different one?
So one thing that we have new to the district starting next year is each school will have 4 mentor teachers. And the idea is that part of that new teacher orientation is to let that mentor work with that individual. And so if they needed extra time, they'd also have that mentor there. And we're working in, I think we'll have about 5 to 6 hours of classroom time where teachers will just be able to work on what they need. So a new teacher could work on the learning management system.
And with the mentor, will the mentor teacher be provided a sub so that they can actually go in during like regular school hours and
Can I address that, TJ?
yes.
So part of that is, and this is connected to our ESEA consolidated grant and how those Title IIA funds are used. And one of the things that the principals wanted and the conversation we had ongoing throughout the meet and confer process was the need for mentors. And so with those 4 mentors, which are stipend positions at each site, there are some defined parameters around what that looks like. And one of those things is those mentors will meet with the first year and those second year teachers who would want and need some help at least 8 hours a quarter outside of that mentor teacher's regular professional day. So whether that's using their prep period to meet with them once a week before school, after school, whatever. There is the possibility to get subs for them from time to time if needed to go out and do that. We have the funding to do that.
Okay, so basically their stipend provides extra pay for the time they're teaching that's not part of their normal
Correct.
everyday class.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And we've, at our principals meeting yesterday, we were discussing this in depth, and everybody's agreed they want to pick those people carefully so that they know what they're getting into and what those expectations are for the job and are willing, able, and enthusiastic about doing that.
Sure, and I just want to make sure that they're compensated fairly for that extra time, so thank you.
Yeah, they'll be getting their normal, essentially, pretty much their normal wage for those hours. So it's pretty good.
It's fair. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I mean, I'm just thinking back 25 years ago when I was a new teacher, keys, and especially in this building, can be a real problem. We got 104 outside doors, and they're all keyed uniquely in some degree. So I'm wondering if that group of new teachers has a checklist that says, here's your key, here's your code, here's your email address, and all that kind of stuff.
So we, for the new teacher orientation, we will have part of that mid-morning section. They'll have an hour with IT and the mentors, and the idea is there because one of the biggest hits that we've had as a district that we've heard from our new teachers is just that whole, the password, the usernames, getting on the Power School. So we will have them logged into Power School. We'll have them logged into, or at least we have the time set aside and the people set aside to help to get them into all of this stuff before they go to lunch that first day of work.
And if I may, so we had an induction committee taking place over the last couple of months with Krista was largely instrumental in making sure we got people at the table and got some work done. And we had 2 or 3 of our newest teachers as part of that group and some veteran teachers. And one of the things we wanted to hear was from new teachers, what were those challenges that you faced? So we heard some very good, useful information over those meetings about exactly those sorts of things. And so we still have to finish addressing some of those things to establish the flow of what this looks like. So when that person comes in to this site to get their computer that has their password, that has their access to the different things, and to get their key, and where does that all occur at? And so we want to smooth that process, recognize that those are very real issues that affect then what happens when they get to the site and they're supposed to be on the job. So I feel really good that we'll have worked out a whole lot of that before these new teachers arrive next year, and that they're getting their key, they're getting their computer, they're getting the password, they're having that stuff, and they're good to go. And the other message that we looked at this from 2 levels. One is what needs to happen here at the district level, and then what needs to happen at the site level. Because I think everyone heard at one time or another this semester, and especially people who were new hires in the middle of the year, we all heard the expression thrown to the fire, left to the wolves, and that's on us. And I understand the sense of urgency that exists that I hired a new fill-in-the-blank teacher, and we need to get out there. And we all need to slow down on that a little bit. And if their start date is Tuesday, October 4th after the start of the year, well, maybe Tuesday, October 4th, they're here, and Tuesday, October 5th, they're at their site, and they're getting some training, and they're getting some help, and they're getting their keys, and they're getting that, and then they're in the classroom on October 6th.
Yeah.
So finally, curriculum. Do we have documents that a new teacher coming into 3rd grade or English in high school?
That's a good question too. So I believe our Title II-A plan is a good one with the resources, and that's primarily for professional development. But one of the other things that is in there that applies to all the sites, and this is as a result of feedback we heard throughout the year related to beyond textbooks, challenges with that. There's a PD aspect to beyond textbooks. There's also a curricular resource aspect to that. This gets down to what I've said about PBIS in the past. There needs to be a better common understanding of what PBIS is and isn't, and what beyond textbook is and isn't. There are some people who believe it is open the computer and there's your curriculum, and that's not what it is. To address that, we're going to have teachers from each site can begin work, and they'll be paid, it's part of a stipend, begin work by grade level and subject area, vetting and organizing curricular resources appropriate for the beyond textbook calendar and sequence of instructional things that are coming. And that was the thing we heard primarily from McDowell Mountain Elementary School. It's understandable when you think of using beyond textbooks for that purpose. So what our hope is through the work that these people will do this summer, is there will be a quarter's worth, maybe a semester's worth of ready materials at any grade level. And if we need to, if that work is successful, we're looking at it as a bit of a pilot, but if it is successful, we can continue that on into later parts of the year for that curriculum vetting, organizing, building aspect of it. The other part of that ties into 2A is then those teachers who are engaged in that will also provide PD to their grade level peers or subject area peers. So not only are they helping vet, create, organize the curriculum that's appropriate for those curriculum maps and calendars, they're then able to do the PD part of it. Hey, this is how you use this resource. So I think we've taken a very positive step towards addressing that issue to make it more teacher-friendly, new teacher-friendly for those people who need that. There are some people who don't. They're good to go. They're rocking with it.
Yeah, but it's
Thank
nice
you.
to have more to provide more tools in the tools kit for our staff.
One of the things with that we've been working on is just since we're looking at like getting more teachers involved that are qualified to teach other teachers on this. I think one issue we've had kind of as a district is like when we got trained on PLP, you know, we all went into a cafeteria and the whole district, you know, watched a video of a guy who taught us how to use the learning management system, and then, you know, that was hard to work with, whereas now we're trying to identify different individuals within our own faculties, and then kind of empowering them to do the professional development, which kind of makes it more differentiated and teacher empowerment.
You can, it can be tailored to the district instead of just taking a general and then having to kind of figure out, okay, so how do I fit this into the box that I'm working out of, right? So it can be better tailored to the district, and then it just is a lot easier when you know the person who presented it to, and you know, like, I can walk down to their classroom and knock on the door and ask a question.
Yeah, it's more intimate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
and we all heard around this table, you know, I can think of 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, I heard this here, and then also through Meet and Confirm. One size does not fit all.
That's right.
So that's part of what the professional development district committee is trying to do, is to recognize what are those things that everybody needs to know, and then how can sites, and even at the grade level, use those early release days and other times that they have to really meet the needs that they have. So I think that I'm confident they're going to manage that well.
Did you have a comment?
I was just gonna say, I mean, best practice using a tiered mentoring system, because you have your expert teachers, whether it's pedagogy or it's a content area, and then you have the teacher down the hall that is just so good at classroom management. So to create that system where everyone has an opportunity to be a leader, I think empowers everyone at the district. And I would, I've said this before, I think it's really important to allow our new teachers to have release time to go sit in a class and watch our teachers that we know are masterful. Whatever it is, whether it is, you know, keeping a class, keeping kids in their seats, whether it's, you know, engaging
learning,
them,
yeah.
whatever it
That's
is,
really
to you know, say, and obviously you know that is resource intensive because you need someone to cover that classroom, but to encourage you know, people the release time to go and observe, you know, other teachers in their practice. I mean, that's how people learn.
So a specific thing in our Title IIA plan is, and this came at the request of principals after talking with their staff, every regular ed teacher will have one professional development day that they need to coordinate with the principal, so you know, you can't have 9 people on the same day. But over the course of the year, they will have that one additional professional development day to either attend a PD event somewhere or to use it to observe in their own building. And so the budget for that allows for substitute teachers to cover them to do that. So that is in place and good to go.
How many new teachers do we anticipate having this year?
Well, it's very limited at the middle school. There might be 3.
Right.
There's only 1.5 or so at the high school. McDowell Mountain's going to have a sizable number, 8 or 9, but he's well on the way to hiring for that. So.
And do we know the positions that have been hired, are there many first-year teachers, or like, are we getting teachers that are veteran teachers? Like, just curious
Yeah, I can
what
tell
the
you
pool is.
for McDowell, it's pretty even.
Yeah.
You know, one new one that I will just say, because most people know, Jillian Levin
Oh, I love
has been
Jillian.
hired as a kindergarten teacher, and that's Gianna's sister. And, you know, she's brand new, and I just think,
We'll have all 3 women
I just
Levins.
think it's great. I mean, she'll be great as a
Yeah.
kindergarten.
Love Jillian.
So yes, you have a brand new first-year teacher in her. I know there's a veteran teacher who we think is going to be back soon with
Nice.
many years of
I hope
experience.
so.
And that's, you know, kind of the balance that we're seeing there. I know we hired someone who's a veteran teacher from, I believe, Ohio, who's moving here and had already planned
Have
to
to
move
be
here.
careful of those Buckeye nuts.
Yeah, but I think it'll be a pretty good mix.
Well, that's good. One of the things I didn't mention during my governing board meeting was that I attended, during the report, was I attended the GCU graduation on Thursday night. My daughter graduated. But she's graduated from the College of Humanities and Social Services. But the way GCU works is they kind of mix it up a little bit. Kids who can't attend with their actual school still can attend graduation. And there were a significant amount of teachers, new first-year teachers graduating from GCU, which was encouraging. I'm like, please, more and more. So it was good to see there, that they still have quite a few graduating that want to be in that profession.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can reach out and encourage people to come to Fountain Hills.
All right, thank you again, Mr. Buckley. The last information discussion item is further discussion and clarification of issues concerning the potential sale of property. I will turn it over to you.
Yes.
Dr. Smith.
Okay, you'll hear me. You'll hear me.
Are these not working? Maybe they're not.
I
Not
think,
for this.
Well, they
that's
don't
all.
work on here, it's for the video.
Yeah.
Well, that makes complete sense then.
Madam President, members of the governing board, and guests, it's hard to believe it was February 23rd, almost 2 months ago, that we had a study session that focused primarily on the matter of potential sale of the undeveloped district-owned properties. At that time, we talked in some detail about the properties themselves and the process in which the district needs to engage in order to sell those properties. I want us to have the opportunity tonight to further that discussion, clarify some of the issues surrounding the matter, and for you to give me some direction in terms of what additional information do you need in order to make a decision as to whether or not to call for an election in order to seek voter approval to move forward. So I prepared some slides here, and their purpose is to refresh people's memories of the details and also to clarify some of the facts that I've heard in public statements and other places that I just want people to understand the facts of this. So to start with, there are a couple of critical dates, and the first most critical date is June 11th. June 11th per statute is 150 days prior to the November 4th election. That would be the last date that any entity could call for a special election. For this board's calendar, our current June board meeting, business meeting, is on June 1st. So if this is an item that's going to get addressed, we need to address it by that date, or there would have to be a special session before the June 11th board meeting. But that is a drop dead date. There's no.
I just want to chime in that that's the date for anything that we would
Correct.
want on the
Right.
ballot. So for the DAA override to be on the ballot, that's the same date that we have to have our information in to the county so that we can get it on the ballot in November.
That is correct. The next critical date is August 12th, and if the board were to,
It's not you.
Good.
It was driving my eyes.
It's some kind of slide transition.
Oh, it's a transition in the slide deck.
if the board calls for a special election, in that resolution, we would have to have information for submission of arguments for and against the item that goes to Maricopa County Superintendent by August 12th. And for members of the audience, that is an opportunity. It's not a one-sided ballot proposition. It's two-sided. This is an argument for, this is an argument against. The county usually sets a number of how many of those arguments can be included, but anyone who is opposed to that ballot initiative would have an opportunity to submit that, to be included in the ballot for voters to consider before casting their ballot.
And that goes to the county, we don't get involved with that.
We do not.
We we are able to write a statement
Right.
from the school district to include in that, but that's the level of involvement we have in the production of that packet.
Correct.
I was actually gonna ask that, so I thought, so the school district has their own statement.
We have a
that is
voice,
included.
Yeah.
Yes,
Just one.
Yes.
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
And then, of course, there's November 4th. And anything we put on the ballot, be it district additional assistance override, be it the land sale initiative, it would require an approval of the majority of voters who take part in that election here in the town of Fountain Hills. The first thing I want to clarify is if the board calls for this election to sell the undeveloped property and it's approved by voters, the board is authorized to do just that, sell the property. We are not a realtor. We are not a developer. I have heard public statements that the district wants to put apartments on this property. The district wants to do this. The district does not do these things, will not do these things, and cannot do these things. We can get voter authorization to sell the property, as was described by the Stiefel people. If that were to occur, then we would get an official appraisal, and we would probably do an RFP for a company to bid on how they would handle the sale of that. But that's it. That's the district's involvement in
It's
it.
very black and white.
Yes,
We either choose to put it up for sale or we don't.
correct.
We're not doing anything to the land. We're not rezoning it. We're not
That's my
hiring
next slide.
anybody. Sorry.
So all three of these properties are zoned residential, and they have been for decades, since literally the town was incorporated in 1990. And the district has no intention, has no plan, has never had a discussion about rezoning these properties. That's another statement that has been made publicly, that the district wants to get these rezoned to put apartments or something else on it. That is not true. These are zoned as they are. They would go onto the ballot as they are currently zoned, which we'll talk about here again in a minute. Again, repeat, there's no intention to rezone. There has been no discussion to rezone, and they will not be rezoned.
And
By
school
us.
district
By
has-
us.
and the school district has no say in rezoning.
No.
That's the town that.
Yes.
Well, didn't they already zone it for family housing?
They're
That's what
zoned as
it's
they
zoned
are.
to
What you
residential.
are about to see here, this is how they have been zoned since 1990. And what I want to point out on each of these, because this information is information that was shared previously with the board and with the public, but there's a couple of emphasis I want to put on. The first one on the Aspen property, 20.2 acres, R135, that's the zoning. When the number of 24 homes maximum, that is if every lot on that piece of property could have a home built on it, the maximum number of homes would be 24. That property has a wash running through it, and you cannot possibly build a home on every single lot. There was a professional land evaluation done that those of you who were on the board in 2016 will remember. At that time, their best estimate was 16 to 18 homes on buildable lots on that piece of property.
And just, R135 means a minimum of 35,000 square feet, and that it has to be a single-family detached home.
Yes.
Thank you. That's good
Yeah.
information that you know.
I was not planning and zoning for a lot.
Yeah.
What do you mean when you say 35,000 square feet? The lot?
The lot is can't be less than 35,000 square feet.
The lot.
The lot.
Not the
Per-
house, the house.
Right, but the lot itself. So literally, I live on 12,000 square feet, so that's 3 times my lot. I'm on approximate quarter of acre. So what you're saying is R135 is approximately a 3/4 acre lot.
Yes.
So those are multi-million-dollar homes.
Thank you.
I'm not in that neighborhood, but go ahead.
Okay.
But that's close to an acre lot, which is huge in Fountain Hills.
And we've talked about it, but that lot, part of that parcel is in a major floodplain, so
Yeah.
there'd have to be a lot of infill and so forth to
Yeah.
make it developable.
The Arroyo Vista property, 17.5 acres, zone R118. Again, if every lot were able to be built upon, there could be a maximum of 31 homes. But not every lot can be built upon due to hillside terrain, right-of-ways, et cetera. Again, the same 2016 professional land evaluation estimated that there could be 19 to 21 buildable lots on that piece of property.
And so what does the R118 mean?
18,000 square feet is the minimum lot size.
So about a
That's
third of an acre.
after all the roads are in, everything else, that is the lot that the homeowner would buy, has to be a minimum of 18,000 square feet.
Okay, so about a third of an acre. Got it.
And that,
Okay. And then the Lago property, 35.1 acres, zoned R110. If every lot, and I think this is where some misinformation has gotten spread, if every single lot there were built upon, there could be 155 homes. Again, the professional land evaluation in 2016 estimated at best there could be 45 to 47 buildable lots rendered on that site. And that's when I drove by there myself yesterday to look at it again. And all you have to do is look at it and know you're not going to build 155 homes there.
that's R110, which means our 10,000 square, that's every house around that neighborhood is R110. So it's ridgeline development. There's a ridge that runs down the middle of it, and then there's the ridge that homes hang off the one side, and it's ours on the other side. So most of this town is ridgeline development. The road goes on top of the ridge, and houses are built on both sides of the road. And that number, 45 to 47, is about right. That's probably the minimum. You could probably squeeze 52 on there, depending on how far down the ridge you went to the east, but no more. And it's the same size lot as every lot in that huge neighborhood.
Okay, would you like to say something?
I just wanted to add two things, something you might not be aware of. If you go on the Maricopa County Assessor's lot and you look at every single lot, which I've done in helping gathering our stuff, all of us are 12,500 square feet, give or take 100 feet either there. The other reason why I spoke earlier was to let you know it's actually in the jurisdiction of the MPOA, and the MPOA advised us that we should advise you that you need to disclose that to a buyer, that that lot is legally not subdividable because you don't have a variance.
Actually,
And that's all I wanted
the
to
information we got from MPOA said that we need to disclose that it is part of MPOA, and MPOA is very adamant that it is sellable, that we just need to disclose it
And any
to
real
whoever
estate
buys
agent
it.
would know that they
That is-
have to disclose
that is
that
what
they're
they told
MPOA.
us.
You have to sign that in your closing documents.
And
but-
I pay that fee.
But the whole point is that it's a minimum of 10,000 square feet. Whoever bought your land and developed those properties had the option to make them bigger, which they did, which is why you have 12,000 some square feet. Again, the district's not responsible for that.
Right. And discussing the houses and how many can fit maybe is not appropriate, but I do have copies of the R110 from the MPOA, which.
That's between the buyer, but that's between the buyer. The only thing the district is responsible for is deciding whether we want to put the land up for sale or not. We're not responsible for zoning, we're not responsible for dividing it out. We're not responsible for who buys it. And even if we chose to put it up for sale, we don't even have to sell it. It's just asking that if the time ever came, we wouldn't have to go back out for election to ask for it. So you're putting the cart before the horse. Go ahead, Patrick.
I think we're about, so what I would like to hear is discussion amongst the board members is where you're at, public setting, any additional questions that you have, and then again, what's very important to me, because the clock is ticking to get to June, and if the decision is not to do it, that's fine, but we need to look at that June 1st deadline in preparation for that. If the decision is to do it, we need to be ready to make that decision by June 1st. So just general discussion that you have on the topic, any questions I might be able to answer now or get additional information. And then, again, specifically, what do you need to help inform this decision moving forward?
And I would just like to point out again, this is a work study session. It's just a discussion. There's no vote happening tonight
And it's being recorded if anyone wants to watch it.
to watch it.
No, I mean, how much does an election typically cost us?
So an election depends on how many things are on the ballot. And because this is a statewide election and you have congressional races and you have everything
Save
else.
money.
There's a lot of things on the ballot, so the cost to do it for us this time would be much less than if we waited to do it in November of '23. Exact cost I can't give you, I'm going to estimate, and we need to have another discussion about the DAA and where we're at with that, but same deadline applies as President Jenkins had said. For a couple of items on the ballot like that, I'm gonna guess we're in the $15,000 to $20,000 range. If it, at the top. If this were not done and put off till '23, when there might only be 1 or 2 or 3 things on the ballot, or this could be the only thing, you could be upwards to 30,000 plus pretty easily. So there's a range in there, but the more things on the ballot, the greater the cost is shared.
Okay.
So-
And we have to have an election in the even years because our school board seats
Yes.
run on even years. So, you know, it's financially responsible to do our stuff on even years. Thinking that the DAA was going to expire.
Yeah.
We
Right.
went out for election this past year. It was probably good we did, you know, that happens because it's a 7-year thing, so it's not always gonna fall on an even year. But this year, you know, there's 3 seats up for school board. In 2024, that'll be the next time there'll be 2 more seats up for school board, so, yeah.
Yeah, I know I've been here for 40 years, so I know a lot of people, and there's, you know, the one thing that wasn't mentioned and we don't know is what we do with the money. And we're required to do a certain amount of things if we sell, one of which is to pay off our debt. And that would reduce taxes, secondary tax. When that comes up to a discussion, it's a no-brainer to a lot of people in this town. That if you're gonna tell me that if we allow you to sell this land, it's gonna reduce our taxes, and that's potentially true, and they say, well, then, do it. And, you know.
And we have to consider that sentiment against, if we need money to pay for building improvements, building maintenance, et cetera, which this money from the sale of the land would be able to go towards. If we don't sell the land, our other options to get that money is to go for a bond, which does change the complexion of what somebody's tax bill looks like.
In a negative way.
Yes.
Yeah, and when we broached this subject in 2016, we had a very different audience, and it was realtors bashing us for how dare we hold on to these pieces of property. So it's, you know, I think, you know, as a school district, we need to be fiscally responsible. And that we have maintained that our number one issue is always to give teachers as much money as we possibly can. You know, and aging buildings require maintenance. It's not as though no one took care of our air conditioning units or our fire alarms. These are things that that only have a lifespan of 15 to 20 years. And we need the money. And, you know, our choices are increasing property taxes for the entire community or taking an asset that we have and potentially selling it to use that money to cover some of our costs. And as we know, I mean, the fact is we were very proud of ourselves because our overrides always passed. And we had one not pass.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know,
At the same time, I want to jump in and clarify that even if the DAA override had passed, the complexion of our district is changing.
yeah.
And we'd
And
still be
having
having
that override doesn't negate the fact that we need a larger pool of money to invest in the changes of technology and what students need to be successful in the 21st century in terms of, you know, providing career and technical education and what that looks like, not just from having, you know, technology on desks, but the type of building space that you need to provide those activities and that type of learning for students. And unfortunately, I think some of the things that are going to help us make a decision are probably outcomes from the facilities use committee, and right now we're not projecting a final report from them until the end of June, unless we can start to get some early information, because I think that that will impact, you know, details that they can share about whether they think it's good to consolidate buildings, and if we do consolidate buildings, what improvements do we need to make in order to make that consolidation possible as we shift students of different age groups over to buildings that currently aren't really structured and built for their usage.
I can share a little bit of that, which I shared with the group yesterday. So as we sit here today, with the $700,000 in this year's district additional assistance in our, if we were to put that entirely into our unrestricted capital fund, we have about $2 million in that fund. We're expecting, and we don't know because the state hasn't made that determination yet, it's a per student amount that they provide for capital funds. Best case scenario, probably $650,000 for next year, maybe $600,000. So collectively, we have about $2.6 million in capital funds, which is a nice number. It's a good number to have. It prepares you to do minimal sorts of projects and handle a crisis that befalls you. It does not enable you to renovate buildings, upgrade buildings, other things like that. The general short list, when we look at the middle school and high school, of immediate capital needs and long-term capital needs, immediate in those, which gets to roofing, windows, doors, weatherization of the buildings, some flooring things inside, some minor bathroom renovations and other stuff. You know, call it a couple million at each building for, in short term, 1 to 3 years. We'll call it $2 million for each building. So $4 million in short term needs there. When you start looking at life cycle of other systems and growing needs as you go, you can get to a $10 million per building number within 10 years pretty easily, and that's not being the Taj Mahal. That's just doing good things to keep those buildings going. So that's kind, you know, the thing that is of urgency is if we don't do the land sales, then we better get going on getting a bond proposal put together. I think, you know, we're in
Yeah,
a
because
space where we have to do one or another.
The $750,000 from the DAA, don't get me wrong, we need that money, but it is not like a windfall that saves us from either selling land or getting a bond.
No, it doesn't.
That number was derived a long time ago. It hasn't changed since that first year, and I can tell you, I was there, we didn't have half the space we have now. That number was developed to keep us going with technology at the time, and other soft costs like books and so forth. It was never designed to be used for facility maintenance.
No, it was always, I remember textbooks, computers.
And we've since become more and more dependent on technology. And when it comes to books, we have done a lot of work in reducing the cost of our textbooks, but still technology has well overrun that. And be to the results that we're getting in academic achievement too. Yeah. So 750 was great back then. It's not even a
With
third.
With inflation, no.
Yeah, after
Third
COVID,
the
after
valley.
our costs, and I think that's something we need to remember too. With COVID, the amount of dollars that we spent, everyone
Because
got
we
a
had to become
Chromebook.
one-to-one.
But we had one-to-one, we had to give families Wi-Fi access. We had a
hotspots.
lot of expenses that were obviously not anticipated, where we used up money that we had in one of our funds. Is it possible to pull up some of the Guardian reporting? Because those numbers are all there. It's from October
don't have
6th.
it.
Yeah.
Do you want me to, if I email it to you?
I may have it on the computer, actually.
It's 2021 FHUSD Gordian presentation dated October 4th.
Yeah, go back to 750. I'm thinking backwards here a long ways, but yeah, that would be closer to almost $2 million today. to do the same thing that we did with 750,000 back in those days. So if we need that override, we could, triple the amount of that override and still, and be covering ourselves without any slush fund
Yes.
being put together. But we have to be realistic on what we can pass and what we can't. And that's always been the case.
And,
Yeah.
and the thing at the end of the day is that if we consolidate McDowell Mountain to the middle school and part of the kids from the middle school to the high school, that leaves us 2 campuses of kids. That leaves 2 campuses that we own, which can't be torn down and built houses. So I have already heard that too, like, why don't you sell 4 Peaks? Well, that's a whole different subject. So that those 3 parcels of land, we don't need. And for 10 years, I've been on this board. For 10 years, every time the sale of land has come up, I've been like, no, 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 no. It was an asset that we really felt that the board should hold on to. But honestly, looking at, from a financial standpoint, 1, we don't need the land, and 2, property values are the highest they've ever been. So if we were ever going to ask for approval to sell the land, it's probably now when property values are high.
That was
But
me sending
again,
it to you.
I already have it.
If we get approval, we could get approval in November, and come February, once we get, things rolling, the market could tank. And then all of a sudden, it's not financially responsible to sell the land.
Right.
So again, it's just asking that when that time comes, that we have the ability to make those decisions. Where right now, we don't have that ability because the voters haven't voted. We're just speculating on what could happen, when it could happen, but we're just asking for approval that if it happens, this is what we could do. But if the land's not worth anything, it won't sell.
I mean, according to Gordian, we need $27.9 million in the next 10 years to meet.
And that's pretty much what the facilities.
Yes, that's a exhaustive, thorough list. that
Right,
gets
that's
to
to redo
replacing
all the-
lighting and-
Yeah.
The
All
windows,
of
the
that
air
includes
conditioners,
Yeah.
everything.
McDowell Mountain, and there would be improvements that if we consolidated, we wouldn't do at McDowell Mountain.
Right, but even
But
between
still.
the middle school and the high school, what we've seen in the numbers from the Gordian report, we're still looking at $20-some million,
Yeah.
probably at a minimum. And to move McDowell Mountain kids over to 4
Yes.
Peaks,
You
or
have to
to the middle school,
Little
you have
things.
to change the playgrounds, you have to change the bathrooms. Kindergarten each has to have their own bathroom.
Yes.
You have to have a special preschool playground just for preschool because it's a tuition-based preschool. Right now Kinder has their own playground. Are they going to be lumped in with,
Can you
K,
go to the next one?
is it 1, 2, and 3? I mean, there's all these different things, and like I told the facilities board, the facilities committee yesterday, in the years I've been on the board, I'm not used to seeing the capital funding be this low. Like, we've depleted our capital funding doing things that had to be done right
Yes.
now, so.
And I do want to say, I mean, this was presented in October, so there's seats up here too. This was presented in October, so this isn't, we've been talking about what we're gonna do to try to come up with these dollars, and I feel as though we hired a reputable company to go through our facilities and really look at what is needed, what can wait. And so it's not like we're just coming up with a random number. It's not as though we haven't identified exactly what needs to be fixed in each one of our schools.
Yeah, and
I
we're
mean,
talking about with this, just fixing stuff. We're not even
Mhm.
talking about improving what we have available to students for their learning.
Yeah, so this basically, between the middle school and the high school, this talks about 17 million, and that wasn't retrofitting anything to bring the K through 3
Which I
kids to the
think-
middle school.
John told us, I feel like that was gonna be 2 to 3 million was his soft estimate.
Yeah, so right now, so if you add that to the middle school and the high school, you're at 20 million. Over, it's over like a 10-year span, but it's still, if you look at the 1 to 3 years, at the high school, the whole roof needs done at the high school. Didn't he say there are repairs that can be done at the middle school, but at the high school, it was the whole roof
Correct,
on all the buildings?
correct.
So that every time it rains, our teachers are their roofs are leaking on them. So,
And how much, do we have any kind of gauge? Because some of this isn't solely on us. We can go to the facilities board and get some funding from them. Do we
Correct.
have like typically they would fund X% of this type of a project?
It's really hard to say because sometimes they will fund fully a project. And the challenge there is it's kind of a first in, first approved, more likely to get funded than others because the demand on them are greater than the resources they have as well.
Yeah.
I know John is preparing some school facility boards applications now to go in July 1 when they can be submitted for next year. But there's
So the
really no,
yeah, so
you
the
can't
truth
predict
is
what you're going to get from school
That for us
facility
to be
boards.
fiscally responsible as a district, we need to be prepared to fully pay for everything that our district needs. And then bonus if we get to not pay for any of it because we get free money from somewhere else. But we should never plan on that money being available to us.
Well, and some of these items I've heard are niceties that, they just want to make it nice. It's not making it nice, it's bringing it current.
And making it safe.
Safe.
And
So this
Right.
is the slide that we need
But,
to show. These are fire and life safety and building envelope, high urgency needs. We're not talking about energy upgrades or cosmetic updates.
And some of the things that we're looking at, because they're not efficient, like the roof leaking, the air conditioning units, whatever,
Yeah,
they're
or
not
the envelope.
efficient. So our utility bills go up.
yes,
And so when our utility bills go up, that comes out of the M&O budget. Well, so do teacher salaries. So when you have to take money out of the M&O budget, that's less money for teachers. So if we can use our capital money to make our buildings more efficient, that frees up M&O money. They then can go to the teachers, because I've heard that too. Well, they want to sell the land, but they can't pay teachers with it. No, we can't pay teachers with it. But when you can actually use this money for what it's for, as opposed to using it over here, then we can pay teachers with it.
How much money do we typically shift from our capital into our M&O out of necessity? It can be a percentage, rough estimate.
Yeah, I don't know that you can really say typically because, for example, with the ESSER grant that we've now gotten completed and approved, we shifted some what would be regular M&O costs into ESSER funding to free up that M&O, sizable amounts, so that we have some left over for a rainy day. So I don't know, you can say typically how much you shift over. You try to not shift any
Yeah,
if
no, I
possible.
know.
And the same, to Dana's point earlier, or Dana and Jill, you're not used to these kind of balances on capital because we don't have a bond in place. And
Right.
so we're living off of the saved unrestricted capital accounts that we have and
rainy day
building
funds.
on it. Yeah, and so again, we're in a position, we can handle a crisis of some sort. We're financially sound to do that, and or we're able to fix things as they need to be fixed and keep things safe. But we are not in a position where you can do, like when we talk about adding bathrooms for kindergarten classrooms, we're
We
not
don't have money for that.
close to being able to do something
And I
at
realize
that
that
scale.
we're waiting for the facilities use committee to give us information. So what I'm gonna say is just my opinion and speculation. But the likelihood that I'm seeing is that it would be prudent for us to consolidate, because while it will cost us money to retrofit buildings so that we can move kindergartners and preschoolers and things like that, the cost for us to continue to try to keep up McDowell Mountain year over year is going to be a much higher cost over time than retrofitting buildings and consolidating students.
Yeah, I mean, John's presented the facilities use committee, the numbers, and that can be a discussion for another day, but, everything's in the millions. It's not, nothing's cheap. So, and McDowell has the same issue, I mean, McDowell was built in 1986. So, it needs new air conditioners, the brick on, that makes up the outside of McDowell, it all needs resealed. You know, they don't know when they open the roof what they're gonna find, you know, I mean, so the roof needs redone. I mean, there's, you know, our buildings are older. The middle school is the newest building and it still needs work. I mean, it's, you know, there are things that we saw there that it's like, it's sad that the construction didn't last as long as it needed to, but, you know, with McDowell being in 1986, the high school was 1992, 91. And then the middle school, late 90s, early 2000s. So, you know, I mean, those are our newest building is 22 years old at a minimum. So there's work to do.
You know, think about it in terms of your homes if you own it.
Right.
If you got a home that's 30 years old and you've done nothing but kind of keep
Putting
things
Band-Aids.
from falling apart. You gotta have to put a new roof on, you have to tear the tile off and put, you know, lame it down, and you're talking $20,000-$30,000 on a 2,000 square foot house. Well, a lot more square footage, and these are flat roofs in some
and
cases.
more HVAC units and.
Yeah.
Well,
you
yeah.
know.
And we were fortunate that SRP gave us a ton of money to put in the coolers and chillers.
Yeah, the chillers, yeah.
Which keeps our costs down. But, you know, that hole in the ground with a bunch of water in it doesn't last forever. If we have to put a new bladder in there to make, you know, we're talking, you know, $500,000, and on and on and on. So as these buildings get to be, as the high school gets to be 40 years old, 50 years old, you think back on where you came from, where nothing in Fountain Hills is that old. There's going to be a lot more that we don't even know about today that needs to be fixed. It could be changes in how we teach. It could be changes in materials, all kinds of things that we can't predict, but we need to plan to have that rainy day fund available when the time comes. And I think a good example is at middle school, where we realized our fire alarms were insufficient. And that comes out of that $2 million that we got. Issues in safety on some of our athletic facilities. So they come up all the time, they always will. That money is not, you know, banked for other uses. It is banked to keep the doors open.
Yeah.
So are there any specific pieces of information I can provide to help inform this decision?
Well, I think that it would be helpful to provide some framing for if we didn't sell the land, what a bond would have to look like and what that impact to taxpayers would be
Right.
if we had to go out for a bond.
Yeah, because that's really our other option. And, you know, knowing that that the override didn't pass, I would hope that voters would pass the bond, but we don't know. And our last one that we went out for, Patrick, was 8,000 or 8 million.
I believe it was.
And so we used it, you can divide it up, and so we used it 4 million and 4 million. So you know, are we looking at an $8 million bond again? Is it a 10 million? Like, is there a cap on what we can ask for?
And then what would the tax burden be on a bond like that?
We can start taking a look at that. Typically with bonds, you look at two things. One is, what are your needs? We know our needs are considerable. And then what is the reality of what is palatable to voters that you can pass?
Right.
I mean, it's true.
And we couldn't pass, the DAA was not a new tax. It was a continuation of a tax that people were already paying, and we didn't get that to pass.
And what, it was $15 a year or something like that?
Okay, I can get to work on that. Anything else?
I just wanted to, because you had commented about the ESSER grants, and for the benefit of everybody who's here, just to make clear that yes, we have different grants that we apply for as a school, as all schools do. Those, again, grants are not guaranteed money. The ESSER grants in particular, 1, 2, and 3 from the federal government are limited. They're associated with COVID recovery.
Yeah, the COVID recovery.
And I think the last year that we have those monies effective for is the 23-24 school year. Is that correct?
The last year that ESSER 3, that's the last one running, is fiscal year 23,
Okay.
which is next
Next
school year, 22, 23.
Okay.
And they will be done by September of 24.
So just again, sharing
Done.
that, you know, we're getting a sizable amount of money in those grants, but that's not long-term funding.
And they are covering costs that we didn't have in any long-term budget anyway.
Yes.
Right.
Or anybody else for.
Summer
No,
school, remediation.
Right,
I mean,
there were
that's
stipulations.
Those are academic, those
Yeah.
are dollars that go
There's
toward
stipulations on
academics,
what
yeah.
you can use those grants for, and it
Yes.
had to be related to COVID recovery.
Yes.
Whether, you know, it was, you know, curriculum or teaching, you know,
Professional
professional
development.
development. So, and the other thing, and that's, you know, I just want people to understand, like, we don't just go to the first easy option. Like, you know, we've all thought about this. Like I said, for 10 years, I've said no to selling this land. You know, we've looked at other budget. I've advocated for our teachers to make sure better salaries, you know, keeping their insurance, you know, that we pay as much as possible. You know, how can we make this work? And it's continually fitting the circle into the square. Like, we just don't want the easy answer, but we have to take the answer that makes the most sense and is going to do the best for our kids and the district. So, you know, we have looked at consolidation. We have looked, you know, now we're going to talk more about the bond. We've looked at the land sale. You know, it's where can we like cut back, closing some buildings, like putting kids more in a centralized location. So these are all things like we didn't just say, hey, let's sell the land and that's all we did. So for those public comments that go, oh, well, why can't you do this or why can't you do that? We do think about those things. You all came in and, you know, partway through this conversation. We've been having this conversation for months. So.
I think the study, the timing was excellent. It gives us a basis to build on when it comes to a long-term budget. We can't predict everything, but we can certainly use a couple centuries worth of history on building maintenance to match to this and figure out what that is going to cost us going forward. And I think that's what we got to cover.
Yeah, and thankfully, Gordian baked in a lot of that, you know, because they have aggregate data from other school
Right.
districts who have similar buildings that were built in similar decades and what the life cycle of those buildings are, which really makes this a very valuable piece of information that we were able to obtain.
Are we allowed, I know that this was presented in a public meeting, are we allowed to make any of these slides public, or are they?
Sure, they're public.
Like, can they go on the website?
Okay. That would be great if we could.
I mean, it's not a secret that our buildings need work, so.
Okay, so other than specifics about a bond, and what I have notes of that is to look at amount and impact on taxpayers. Any other specific information that you would like?
Well, eventually it's got to come to a vote of the board, whether or not we put it on the ballot. If that's got to be done by the first week in June, then we got a month to talk about it some more, but we're going to make that vote probably in that first of June meeting.
We truthfully have
I agree.
our next, so we only have the May 10th meeting, and then we have our next meeting after that is that June 1st business meeting. So I'm just saying, you know, I'm definitely open to the board having an additional work study session in May if we feel we need to further dig into this topic so that we can make sure that we're all informed before we would bring anything to a vote.
We may want to look at that, a work study session towards the end of May.
Yeah.
I know we're all really busy with, you know, 8th grade promotion, graduation, senior you know, everything that goes on at the end of the year, but it may be something that we should probably have another work study session. You know, it's easier to have conversations like this than it is up there when you're talking about things that are so, you know, they're hot topics.
Let's have Krista try to get a date
Yeah.
Okay.
with you guys worked out in the next, you know, couple of days, so we get it on
Agreed.
the calendar.
And I appreciate all the information on the land, Patrick. I think that was very concise, and I think it shed a lot of light on those 3 properties.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions, comments, discussion items? Okay. Since that was the last item on the agenda, just want to share that if you have an item that you'd like to see on a future board meeting agenda, please reach out to Krista. The dates of the upcoming meetings, Tuesday, May 10th, Tuesday because Wednesday night is senior recognition night. So Tuesday, May 10th is our next business meeting at 6:30 p.m. Wednesday, June 1st, 2022 is our next business meeting after that, also at 6:30 p.m. As we just discussed, we're looking to throw another work study session in between those, but that's to be determined at this point and will be posted publicly once we have that decided. So with that, I move we adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes and meeting is adjourned.
Wow, we got out early.
Nice.
But we put in a
Although,
lot of
no, I just have to
conversation.
You know, I was looking
What's that?
Are you done recording?
She's
Unfortunately, I'm gone the 12th to the 20th.
okay.
And so